How's it going, Dave? What's
Great.
Are you still locked down you're in Arizona, right?
I'm in Arizona, not so much locked down. I actually don't know what the actual official state of our state is. I'm out. I just got done doing a bike ride. I get up, I get outside. Our weather is great here pretty much year round. So I took up golf again for the third time in my life this year. I used to play golf. It was like the one sport I tried. I mean, I played some sports, of course, when I was in school, but I like varsity year of school, I took it up, and I quit when I moved to LA, and then I took it up again when we all moved out here to Arizona to make the Euthanasia record. Dave and I were out golfing a lot, and then once my kids were born, I realized, I didn't really want to be out of the house 6-7 hours a day, because I'm gone a lot anyway, touring. Yeah. So I hung the clubs up again. So this is the third time now I've taken it up. But
nice.
Our governor said, hey, go out and play golf. That's one thing you can do during the pandemic. So I'm like, all right, well, screw it. I'm going out to play golf, So
that's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, because where I live in India, social distancing is a problem and all that. So you can't really, it's not really safe to step out. So
I can't even imagine, having been to India a few times now, I can't even imagine what you guys are dealing with just the, of course, I've only been in the big cities, but even in some of the outlying smaller towns, just, you guys are like, you're everywhere. There's a lot of people in the country, man. I don't even know how, when I heard you guys were starting to get hit, I'm like, oh, good Lord. I don't know how you guys would even deal with that, so.
Yeah, I think like most things, right? They've not been able to figure out what's going on. Right. Whether we have like herd immunity or, just the fact that the mortality rate is lower in India, they've not been able to kind of figure it out. So,
yeah, well, that's good. That's good to hear. Well, look, our president over here has it. So they say.
Yeah. Yeah.
Who knows? We can't trust anything that anybody says over here. Yeah. I certainly don't think it's something to be very flippant and light with, because certainly a lot of people have died from it, so it's something to be taken seriously. Look, as we know, it certainly has affected our business, which is why, right behind me is now my little mini home recording studio, and it's kind of like have laptop will travel. And look, the record business has gone that way for years anyway.
Yeah.
And there's still some of the big rooms, LA, Nashville, some of the hip hop and pop music has brought back some of the larger recording studios, but in rock, it's all been getting smaller and smaller.
Absolutely.
And smaller,
yeah.
Which means the budgets get smaller, the records sell less, so, the whole scale of economy, gets affected everywhere,
Yeah.
And then the economy of the scale gets affected. It all moves down,
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Some say rock is dead, and of course we know rock is never really dead, because rock is what's in your heart. It's a way of life. But yeah, from the business of rock, it's been challenging. And then to be hit with this and shut down kind of the one last outlet that we had, which is merchandising and live performances. It's just been devastating.
And just when it was picking up, right? The whole live music scene was picking up, was growing year on year. So this couldn't have come at a worst time, in a sense, right?
Yeah. And I saw, it's a friend of mine over in the UK that does some coffee for me over there. He just sent me the official or some news clipping that said, musicians should be prepared to start retraining for other jobs and other careers. So that's the sad.
That's the whole point of being a musician, that we didn't want to do something else. Right?
That's what I always said. That's the whole point, is we don't have to go get jobs. So now we're just going to have to find out a new way to not get a job.
Absolutely. Yeah. Upskill. Anyway, Dave, I want to talk a little bit about, obviously, the album that's coming out, No Cover, with your band, Ellefson. Congrats. You guys just got signed to Your Music as well?
Yes. Yeah. It's, Ward Music has been fantastic for us across Asia. They reached out to me. I guess we got connected to them by way of our friend Chizzy over at Burn Magazine, who was
Ward's in Japan, right?
Yes. Yep. And so that was back when I did the show with KK Downing at the steel mill back in October or November, I guess it was. And so that led to a great, partnership and relationship now with Ward Records, and which is great. So we've got our US, or I should say North America, Asia, and then for ear music to come on board for Europe was just, that just really wrapped things together for me personally, for the Ellefson's band. And, even as that may be beneficial even to some other stuff for Combat Records, so it's just great to have, an ear. I just couldn't think of a better place to be, and my partner, Thom, who also, is my manager on things that we do. He, that was one that he was really working on. So he gets the props for that, for getting landed.
Yeah. And you have got some big bands on their roster, right? They've got some
Def Leppard, Alice Cooper. In fact, I talked to Alice a couple years ago about it, because we were doing some stuff with Alice's son, Dash. He had his band Co-op that we put a record of his out through our label. And we're in Vegas doing a showcase for Dash, and Alice was just gushing. he just said, man, this is an amazing record deal, okay, the company's great. And so, look, Alice is, like me, like Megadeth, but certainly Alice more, he's been in the business his whole life. He's had certainly his share of record deals. So, to hear him be so that caught my attention then, and as Tom's had a relationship with them, and it was just a matter of, I think, kind of bringing the right thing into them. And so we're very, very thrilled to have this coming out through ear across Europe.
Yeah. Fabulous. Yeah. Coming back to the album, Dave, I think 13 songs and, covers of Motorhead songs, Wasp and Def Leppard, Cheap Trick, all of that. It's one thing to, these songs, you can never tire of these songs, right? We grew up listening to these songs and we play these songs. How hard was it to play such an eclectic album of covers?
For me, I didn't really think about it other than every day I woke up so excited to just literally, this chair swivels the other way. I'm sitting there playing bass, and I was carving the tracks. And, like you said, I'm such a fan of these songs, and these songs shaped my life. It was interesting to go back now some 30, but almost 40 years since I've heard, or, since these songs were, the soundtrack of my life as a teenager, pre-teenager, some of them. And to go back and now to really dig into them as a musician and understand what they were doing while they were in the studio cutting these tracks. And of course, I had just gotten done recording the Megadeth record in Nashville. So my awareness of the scoping of detail was pretty astute. I call them my studio ears were on big time, which, was fun because, we all start out as cover musicians, and I played some of these songs in my bands growing up. And of course I was a very young musician, and it was all still kind of a bit of a fantasy, sort of an unreachable fantasy at that point. These guys were just a poster on my wall. Now they're my contemporaries. And I can go back and go, God, okay, so this is what they taught me. It's like, I do that when I record in the studio too, or, oh yeah, I see where he chose that note instead of that note. I see where the bass in particular is supporting a chord here. And so, to really go in and understand the songs on a almost molecular level. Yeah. I think that was probably the treat for me. And, I always say we're all in the same band, in some ways, these different personalities that make up a 4 or 5 person group. I always think about Rush and Triumph and some of the 3-piece bands, Budgie, these guys, it's like, I wonder what's like in a 3-piece band because, you're kind of always outnumbered. It's always 2 against 1 or, in some setting. I've always played usually in 4-piece bands. And often with 2 guitars. So they're kind of the bookends and the bass lives somewhere in between there. I've done some playing like with Ronnie Montrose. And while I didn't record with Ronnie, I played live with him. There was a real freedom to just kind of really go off and play in a very exploratory, almost improvisational way that you don't generally get to do inside of a two guitar band. I played in church bands, I played in jazz band, I played in a lot of different settings. So it was fun on No Cover, I think, to take all of those experiences that I've had and bring it in here and really discover the uniqueness of these players. Thom says it all the time. He goes, man, as I'm singing these songs, I realized that because this is a very bass heavy record, and to the degree of how many different styles you had to play.
Exactly. Yeah.
Just
so many different bass lines, right?
Yeah. I mean, everything from, Not Fragile, that bass line, that was a special one for me because that was the first needle drop on the BTO Not Fragile record. That is the very first thing, that I heard. I mean, I heard You Ain't Seen Nothing Yet and Taking Care of Business. I guess I heard that's You Ain't Seen Nothing Yet. I heard on the radio. But when I got the Not Fragile record and I heard that, I didn't even know what that was. Like, what is that? Oh, that's a bass guitar. Interesting. And then I saw what it looked like. The Fred Turner from BTO had a black Rickenbacker 4001, and I'd noticed it only had 4 strings, but they were really big and fat. It was a little longer than the Stratocaster that Randy Bachman was playing next to him. So you really start to dig into the detail of all this stuff. So that it's funny. I went through a lot of basses. In fact, there's this Music Man back here that I ended up using to cut that opening bass line.
Oh, nice. Okay.
I have this Steve Harris P bass that I cut, and I had some flat wound strings sitting here. I've got a few of them in a box over here. These D'Addario flat wounds. I've had them literally for like 20 years. Nice. And I put those on because Steve uses like a kind of a bright flat type of string, the Rotosound version of it. And it sounds great, obviously, but I tried to get that tone because I think that line is probably recorded with flat wound strings back in the 70s. They didn't really, round wounds they were just coming of age. So I dug through all these basses, and the Fender didn't work. I picked up the Jackson that was way too thrashy and clangy. And I needed something that was clean. You could hear the throat of the note, the real, the kind of the voice of the note, but without it rattling. And I thought, let me grab that Music Man out of the closet. I got a 4 and a 5 string. So I pulled the 5 out, and it was like, whoa, there it is. It was clean. It was clear. The Music Man kind of chokes the note a little bit because of where the pickup is placed. It doesn't give this big, long sustain, which is why it's such a great funk and R&B instrument. Yeah. And it's why it doesn't really work for me with most of the metal stuff, because I need more length to the note. But for that BTO thing, it was like, oh my gosh, there it is. It just hit the notes, and every note on the fingerboard spoke well. And bass guitar, basses have dead spots on them. Especially when you're dealing with wood, and especially if you're not. That's why I use active electronics, because passive electronics, they really, you can hear the dead spots. And whereas active electronics will sort of pull a note out of the bass that a passive pickup won't.
Nice. Dave, sometimes, what happens with cover songs is that, the cover becomes, a more definitive piece of work than the original itself, right? Right. Was that something you thought about while you were doing this? Were these just replicated note for note, or did you put a spin on these covers?
Well, I would agree with you. I mean, look, I think of like Van Halen, You Really Got Me. As cool as the Kinks version was, I mean, the Van Halen one, I think for sure a more identifiable version of that song. And there's some artists like Van Halen who have done that. They've taken covers, and that one in particular. And Megadeth, of course, we've done our share of covers, and we've always sort of put our own spin on them. We've sped them up. Dave's character to his voice takes it to a different place that makes it very kind of snotty and brings it into the character of Megadeth, kind of as his punk rock thing about it, These Boots Are Made for Walking was certainly one of those, but it's, and in that case, basically introducing our fan base to a song, quite a song that I wasn't even familiar with until we brought it in, At the same time, earlier this year, back in May, my Ellefson solo band, we put out a version of Post Malone's song Over Now. And that was a completely different approach where we took a very current song of another genre and just moved it right over into heavy metal.
Yeah.
And introduced a rock and metal audience to a current hip hop song, if I can call post hip hop. I don't even know if that's the right genre to call him, but let's call it that for now. So we brought that genre right over into metal, and in a way that was, as they would call it now, reimagined. You know, that's like the new word now. Oh, it's reimagined.
Yeah,
you know. So that's you know, so that was one way to do it. And then you move a month later. Now we're doing the No Cover record. I think for me, the main thing is these songs, we did not want to alter the arrangements. At least I wanted to stay very true to
the original.
To that. Yeah.
Okay.
At the same time, a lot of these guys are my buddies, and they're my contemporaries, and I've toured with them. I see the guys in Judas Priest. So when they hear it, I want them to go, right, mate, that was good on you.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, does that make it harder that they're contemporaries and they're going to listen to all of these songs? Does that make it harder when you record?
You know, I think it made it maybe more of a proud moment for me to sit back and go, yeah, you know what? My band fucking kicks ass. Like, these are great players. Everybody here just fucking kills it. And we do, you know, we paid respect, you know, to say, hey, your music changed our lives. And this is our homage back to you. I mean, even our cover was an homage directly back to Def Leppard.
I saw it and I thought On Through the Night.
Of course. And it's funny because that is the record of Def Leppard that changed my life. I liked High and Dry. I remember that was a great summertime record of, I don't know, 1981, 82, something like that. That was
80s,
but that record in particular changed my life. You know, Def Leppard was the band out of the new wave of British heavy metal that made the whole thing seem actually approachable and possible for me because of how young they were. And they were on stage doing what I was in bands going, fuck, we could do this. Like these Def Leppard guys are pulling this off, man. They're the back cover, they're on stage. You can see they're opening for AC/DC.
Yeah.
And you're like, fuck, dude, we can do this, you know? And as a, you know, energetic teenage dreamers that we all were in my band growing up, as a lot of my fans are, who are in bands covering Megadeth and Metallica songs, and you know, they've got that same, you know, passion. That's why I wanted to sort of give that throwback to Def Leppard and go, man, thank you guys.
Nice.
You guys, I wouldn't be here without you.
Fantastic. What's the story behind the name though? No Cover.
No Cover.
Yeah.
You know, it's you know, like when you go to a club, like you go to a nightclub, and they always say like, there's a cover charge. Yeah. So we're like, no cover, you know, like this one's on us. You know, everyone's welcome. And it kind of even more maybe fitting because of the time, you know, it's like pandemic shutdown. Hey, we're open. Come on in. No cover. Just grab a beer, sit down, and, you know, enjoy the music.
Fabulous. Can you talk a little bit about the guests that played on this album? You had a whole bunch of guys that played on it, right?
Yeah. And that was really just, you know, we'd started doing some live streams earlier this year for the David Ellefson Youth Music Foundation, under the banner, "Oh Say Can You Stream?" And it was at a moment where everything was really shutting down back in April, May. And the sort of hopelessness of like, oh my gosh, my whole life is going away. I'm watching a year of money just go away. My tour is canceled. I can't. The recording dates indefinitely pushed back. Like, oh my gosh, is the world ending? You know, that feeling we all experience. And it's a global feeling for once in the world. You know, it's like when you watch these movies like Independence Day. Yeah. It's like we're all fighting with each other until the aliens from outside come and attack us. And finally we bond together as humans. Like, that's what this pandemic is. It's that one of those Independence Day moments where it's like we all pulled together as people, and it's like we let all of our bullshit, put it to the side for a minute, and just like, oh my God, our very survival as a race, or as a species, I should say, as a species, depends on what we do right now. Yeah. And I think for us, you know, as species in the music and entertainment business, we started these streams to pull everybody together, go, hey, let's keep our foot, pull our noses up, like aim high, like keep the horizon high here, because we're going into a frickin' tailspin. Let's pull up and look out. And so those streams were a way to rally people. We through the foundation, we started doing giving free music lessons to teenagers all around the world.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of what started it. And I think it rallied all of us together. So as we started the new cover record, my core band of me and Thom and Andy Martin-Jelly, Paulo Caridi,
Mm-hmm.
as our core band, what we started to realize was there's a lot of our friends around the world. Doro, of course, in Germany.
Mm-hmm.
Got my Italians over there with Andy and Paulo. But people all around the United States here as well, just going, man, let's keep that spirit going. And so I just started reaching out to people like, Thom is good friends with Jason McMaster, who's been a big Megadeth fan. Thom was on the phone with Charlie Benante, and he was kind of just frustrated, with just obviously everything just being in flux. And so I said, I want to play a few tracks for our record, and I hit Dave Lombardo. Of course, I hit Dirk up because I knew he was just, Dirk lives in L.A. Our Megadeth drummer Dirk Verbeuren, he lives in L.A. And of course, they were really shut down, and said, well, look, run over your studio and bang out a track or two for us. So it was really just a way to keep that communal spirit alive. And I find with all these things, you let the song dictate the course, as I was listening, for instance, Sheer Heart Attack, because we talked about doing a Queen song, and to me, it'd be either Death on Two Legs, or Sheer Heart Attack. And so Sheer Heart Attack I love it. And so obviously with Bumblefoot, Bumble can sing and play anything. So we had him sing it. We added Thom down in the low. And then I said, I think it needs a female voice. And so we hit Doro, and she was just on the Mega Cruise with us back in October. Okay. So she said, sure, no problem. And then we said, hey, you want to sing on a Motorhead track while you're at it? And she asked, and she was like, well, which song? And I said, again, we didn't want to just do kind of Ace of Spades and all the sort of the sound of the more common ones. We wanted to dig deeper. And so Love Me Like a Reptile is a song that me and my friend Greg used to play in our bands growing up in high school back in Minnesota. So I said, let's go for that, because Ace of Spades is kind of my Motorhead record that I grew up on. And so I even called Greg. I said, hey, Greg, you want to sing and play on it? So he was thrilled, obviously, to sing on a track with Doro. And so we got a couple of Doros on this one, and a couple of Charlie Benantes. So yeah, it's been really cool.
When does the album come out, Dave? Wasn't it due out for release sometime now?
Well, we originally set it for October 2nd, but then once the deals came in with Ward, and then once the Ear Music deal came in, they had requested we push back the actual full release until November 20th, just so we could synchronize it as a worldwide release. So, with everything in this, it's everything's been so subject to change in this world, but it was like, no problem. Like that was an easy one to do, to accommodate, because we wanted that. We want this to be something that everybody around the world can get it. And, when you can coordinate a global worldwide release that's huge. It's a big time move, and especially for something like this, which was just such a random it was just a phone call. Hey, you want to record a couple covers? Sure. Why not? We got nothing else to do this summer. It went from that to being this global, international release. So, to accommodate that was a no-brainer to push it back.
So November it's out, right?
November 20th. Yep. And we're dropping the Auf Wiedersehen single.
It's out today, right?
Video. Yeah.
I just saw the teaser. Jody sent me the teaser.
Yep.
I think the video's out.
The teaser's out, and I think the actual release, I forgot if it's October 9th, I think. And pardon me for not having all these dates straight. Thom knows all those. I just play bass. What do I know?
I'll look it up. You had a Kickstarter campaign or an Indiegogo campaign to fund the album.
We did. We did, because, look, this record had some pretty heavy expenses in it. Of course, we wanted to do vinyl and CD, and vinyl is quite expensive, and it turned into a double. It's basically a double album, So, man, I realize how much work we've done this year. Just again, from recording a Megadeth record, going into this, which was a double album undertaking. We'd already written and recorded more than half of an Ellefson solo record of original material. So, and there's a couple of other things I've been working on as well. So, this was a big undertaking. And one of the biggest things in America, you have to have the licenses. You got to secure the music licenses because these are cover songs. So you can't just, live, you can play any song you want because of ASCAP and BMI. And those things will collect, those societies are in place to collect the royalties. But when you record something, you have to actually go secure the music license. So that was a pretty hefty expense on this. And as we got it, we're sitting here just going, we'll do this song and that song. No, we got 18 songs. We went, oh shit, now we got to go buy these songs. We got to pay for them. Yeah. So we did the Indiegogo, and, to just basically help cover the cost of it. So, but yeah, it was great. Everybody jumped in. So this is very DIY, it was very much like us just starting a band. And again, like a lot of little indie DIY bands, like, oh, we got to do a Kickstarter, bro, to pay our band expenses, so this was definitely a roll up your sleeves, get your hands dirty kind of record, which made it a lot of fun, actually.
I can't wait for the album to come out. I was looking at the track list and the guys that played on it. I can't wait for it to come out. Dave, I want to talk a little bit about the philanthropic work you've been doing. I don't know how many people are aware of it, but you have there's the Dave Ellefson Youth Music Foundation. I also read somewhere that the 9th of October is the Dave Ellefson Day. Is that right?
It is. That's
in your hometown.
It is in my hometown. Which, now that you mention it, I guess if this Auf Wiedersehen track is dropping on the 9th.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Yeah.
Thank you for the reminder. Yeah, so I got in, we did a coffee. Let me just give you the timeline. So we did a big event with Ellefson Coffee. We partnered with a store that was already in kind of the main street of my hometown in Jackson, Minnesota. We infused some cash into that to kind of bolster that. We put our name on the door, Ellefson Coffee Company. So it was nice to have our own coffee shop, and especially in my hometown. And we've since moved it up the street, so it's still there. We've got like a little museum, kind of a David Ellefson, museum of my stuff there. And because of that, the Iowa Rock and Roll Hall of Fame reached out to me to induct me into the Hall of Fame, and Megadeth had, I guess, right around the time we just won our Grammy that year. So they inducted me into the Iowa Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and at the same time, Thom and our friend Donnie Schoenrock, who owns the restaurant Cat's Hog Heaven that has the Ellefson Coffee store inside of it in Jackson, Minnesota, they conjured up this plan to have David Ellefson Day. So the mayor proclamated that October 9th is now the official David Ellefson Day in Jackson, Minnesota.
That's a pretty big honor, right?
It's amazing. It's especially because it's kind of now forever, it's there, so, I had a wonderful upbringing in my little hometown of Jackson. And at one point I couldn't wait to leave because I had aspirations, obviously, to go rock the nations and do what I do. And I couldn't do it from Jackson, but, I always had good memories going back home. My mom and dad and my brother have now all since passed on. I have nephews that live there. And some extended family, and our family farm, the Ellefson family farm, is still there. That the first Ellefson came over from Norway back in the late 1800s and bought the first piece of land. So that farm is still in our family, and so it's great to be anchored back to something like that. It really is cool. And so as a result of the David Ellefson Day, that was when I wanted to start the nonprofit foundation, the David Ellefson Youth Music Foundation, because I thought, having my own day is wonderful and a great honor. But I thought, what can I do with that to give back something? Because to just have my own day is cool for me. But let's keep that train moving to do that. And so what we found is that through the foundation, just like Jackson, which is a small rural town, there's often a lot of focus on sort of the bigger cities that have struggling music programs, but I'm a small town kid, and so these small towns in these outlying areas, they struggle with music and arts programs as well. Of course, they've got their football and their booster clubs and these things that help pay a lot of the bills at the schools. But the music and arts programs, they suffer, and they're usually the first ones to get cut, when there's financial, straps, So that's what we've used that for. The Grammys, timely enough, the Grammys had just started a new pillar of their organization called the Grammy Music Education Coalition. And so they brought us right into that and became a real, the Grammys obviously have huge bandwidth, and they're able to, help promote a lot of what we do. They helped us with our live streams. They brought us in to do different events with them. So they've really been, great. So again, it was kind of one of those things, to win a Grammy was awesome. But to be able to be part of their coalition allows me to give more back and give something back rather than just having the statue sitting up here on my shelf, which is again amazing. But yeah, it's great when a gift to you helps create something that you can keep giving something back to somebody else somewhere else.
Yeah. You also have an initiative called Schools Out, right?
Yes, and that was where we did the free music lessons to the students around the world, and that was part of the Youth Foundation. Okay, and we did that earlier this year because schools were shutting down. Initially here in America, and then eventually everywhere. We just thought, let's keep people excited about music, because I know how I am. I mean, when I was young, and if I had to stay in the house all the time and not do anything, I'd lose my mind. What I mean? Unfortunately for me, these basses back here, that's what I did as a kid growing up, and any day off from school is like, awesome. I'm going in the basement and I'm going to put on my records and I'm going to shred and play bass and learn songs. But I always had bands. So again, I kind of always had an outlet and a vehicle. I had a vehicle to sort of keep me moving down the road in life and still do. Not everybody has that. Some people, they're not going to be professional musicians. They just like playing for the fun of it. And it gives them enjoyment. And that alone is worthy of keeping that going, is just the
absolutely, because focused, it helps build self-confidence and creativity
for sure,
and all of that, right? We have a couple of initiatives, nonprofit initiatives in India where they work with underprivileged kids and give them music education.
Yeah, and it's look, as there's all these sort of scientific research with math and sciences and things like that with with music. And I'll be honest with you, I'm okay at math. I was kind of maybe a B+ student in math. If I tried really hard, I could be an A student, but I didn't care that much. Yeah. So, to me, music was the escape from math, I play with other people where they're very mathematical about music and about how everything has to work out. And again, we're all wired differently. To me, to just kind of get a guitar or bass in my hand and sort of just check out and escape through that channel of music has been so, I mean, I don't know where I'd be in life without it. I mean, it's obviously it's what I was put here to do as well,
I've read that Kiko is quite the guitar nerd and the a math nerd in a sense, right?
He is. Yeah. He's, Kiko's has I always admire his tireless energy around music. I mean, like in the studio last summer, we'd be working 8 hours a day, and then we'd go to the kitchen, get a little bite to eat, and he'd go right back and turn on YouTube and watch Miles Davis and Weather Report. And he basically wrote his solo album in the after hours. Or we'll be on the road and after the show, he'll pick my bass up and just start playing. And I'm like, geez, dude, but after the show, I need everything to be quiet. My ears, a lot of volume, or we'll walk into a hotel and there'll be a piano over there and he'll run over and start playing on the piano. Amazing. While the tour manager's checking us into our room. So I'm always just like, it's I mean, I love music too, but there's times when I kind of need to step away from it. And, Kiko just has, again, this tireless enthusiasm for music. Amazing. And it's contagious. It's cool to be around, actually.
Amazing. I want to talk a little bit about Ellefson Coffee. How did that come about? I mean, what is it with, musicians and coffee in a sense? I think Zakk Wylde's got something, Dave Mustaine's got something, Joey Kramer's got something. Right?
Well, hot sauce, beer, whiskey, wine, coffee, it all kind of became this trend, I think, over the last 10 years, Yeah. And I mean, I think, look, to some degree, it brings our lifestyle into your home as a fan. If you can own our sort of food product that's kind of a lifestyle thing. I think probably Jimmy Buffett was maybe the first one with it. He's a kind of a pop star over here. And there's also some country music stars that have done it as well. Sammy Hagar, of course, in the rock world is probably our hero of boy, that guy hit the big time. He hit the lottery with it. But it's I think as long as it's sort of truthful with the narrative of your music and your lifestyle, then it works, and I'm a sober guy. I don't drink anymore. I quit drinking 30 years ago. So for me, Combat Records, at one point we had a little Cabernet wine thing and whatever, just because it was part of the lifestyle of the brand of that, skateboards and CBD and all this kind of stuff. But, I can stand behind coffee personally with my own name on it because I drink it every day, in the morning and in the afternoon. I wouldn't call myself an aficionado because I think that's like, I don't go to Guatemala and walk the farms to pick the
I was just going to ask you, do you drink coffee in all the cities you go to?
Oh, of course I do. Yeah. And I do go to markets. It's like, especially in Costa Rica and San Jose, I went to there's a great market right in town and they have all these different coffee. They literally have the beans there. I've had fans who own farms around the world send me coffee and say, hey, please check out my bean. And these are raw beans, which are basically green. And I say, well, I'd love for you to, start a partnership where I could sell you my beans and you can roast them for your coffee. I don't have a roasting business. That would really probably be the next step for me. But it would probably require me to not be a full-time bass player in order to do that. So, there's some things where I just hit a ceiling and I have to outsource. So the roasting, I outsource. My main roaster, I've got a few of them actually. My main roaster for the US is right here in Phoenix. I do have one up in Minneapolis that helps fulfill some orders for me up at our store up in Jackson, Minnesota. I have a roaster over in the UK who helps me who does all of our UK and European orders over there. I have a roaster down in Sao Paulo, Brazil, that we did a Coffee Hunters. We did a collaboration with them. So, but I have to do that because otherwise, like I say, I just turn into a full-time coffee guy. And for me, the coffee is and I also have some coffee kind of thing rather than I've quit playing bass to become a coffee guy. So I guess I could do that at some point, but I still have enthusiasm and musical aspirations.
Amazing. And tell me, you also have the label, there's the EMP label and Combat Records, right? Yeah. How are the two different?
Well, EMP, I started it. It's an acronym for Ellefson Music Production, which is the production company I started many years ago, back in the 90s, actually, when I started writing and doing a little bit of producing work. And so I guess probably the first place that EMP started was as I was producing things. I didn't produce like for labels. Like people didn't say, oh, David Ellefson's a producer, let's hire him to produce, the new record for whoever, I would find artists that I just was passionate about, that I liked, that I felt like, what, you guys got something there. Let me take you in the studio. Let's work on something. And if we can get it signed and turn it into something, hey, maybe it get you guys up and running. So I would always do it just from that passion. So, but the problem is once you do that, then you're always walking around the music business sort of with your hat in hand. Could I please have a record deal for my production? And people in the business, they're always passionate about whatever they're doing. Absolutely. So by starting EMP, it gave me a home base and a platform by which I could take the things I was producing and actually get them out into the marketplace. And I would be in control of it and not have to go around and ask favors from other people to sign my stuff. So it put me in this, it was kind of the missing component, When Combat Records became available for us to relaunch that. That very much is a lifestyle brand. And look, the old Combat Records is, I would say, very much the house that Megadeth built. We were the one band that really made it to the big time, getting signed to Capitol Records. And, they Combat did very well with the money they made from Megadeth, which allowed them then to sign, a lot of other bands. They had Exodus and, Venom and Merciful Fate. And, there's all these other bands that they had at one point in time. And, that's how record labels work. If one artist is a hit, now you've got some cash that you can go out and sign other bands, So, but that whole company, as that stood back then, had been completely sold. All the masters were sold off to Sony. So, we don't have those masters. Like, we didn't buy, I don't have Killing Is My Business in my, my archives of my Combat records. So everything was sold off. So basically it just was a logo and a sort of a thought of, all right, how do we relaunch and move, this legendary Combat records? How do we move this forward? And I give props to Thom, because he probably understood it better than me. Well, on being in Megadeth on Combat was not such a fun experience back then, because they didn't have a lot of money. And me and Dave had big superstar dreams and ideas with we had I guess, champagne and caviar ideas on a hamburger budget, and so it wasn't so workable for us. But Thom understood it, because Tom's 10 years younger than me, so he grew up on the Combat artists. Like, he told me, he goes, you got to understand, man, for people my age who grew up on Megadeth and all this stuff, he goes, Combat Records was a that. If you were on Combat, you were a cool band, and we immediately went and checked you out, and those artists and those bands changed our lives. So I think for a lot of it with Combat is we're very particular about who's signed to it. Ironically, I'm signed to the label. So it's kind of funny that here I am all these years later, I go back to my beginnings and I get signed to my alma mater, and it's
amazing.
So, yeah.
But do you think, as all of the streaming stuff evolves and all of that happens, do you think the record label has a future at all? A generic label,
Well, here's how I look at it, because we put some other artists out through their records out through Combat. If you can go do a TuneCore or some of these independent things, and I know a couple of people who have actually made quite a bit of money from it, but they're also very famous already. They have their own fan base. When you don't have a fan base but you have a great record and you're an ambitious artist, you still need a vehicle, to get on the road. So you have and Combat, and for this case, becomes that vehicle. And we still have all of the, the pipeline to the record promotion, radio publicity, like what you and I are doing right now, we have that. Now, granted, you have to, as an artist, be compelling enough to have someone from India want to interview you, right? Yeah. I mean, that you still have to have enough interest there, but a label, that's their job, is to help build the interest, to help make the connection from the artist to the record buyer, to the fan, and make that. And that is a real partnership between the artist and the label. And I think we've done that. We've and again, it's all a crapshoot. I mean, what's the chance that any of this stuff works? I mean, Megadeth, we became famous almost despite some of our own lifestyle setbacks, which of course have been made very well known through documentaries and movies. And Dave just put out the Rust in Peace book that tells an even deeper story of that.
Your own books,
Yeah. So again, we've been very open about that, but so again, rock bands are what they are. Like we'd said earlier, for a bunch of guys who just didn't want to have jobs and play guitar all day. It's almost, bands are almost broken from their inception. You know what I mean? It's this rebellious, we're not going to play by the rules. And then now all of a sudden you sign a record deal. Well, guess what? Now there are some rules, then you get a manager who tries to manage the unmanageable. And then you get a booking agent, and now there's contracts. So it's like, now there are rules, and there's penalties for not playing by the rules. So, I think that's sort of the put on your big boy pants, grow up phase of being any artist. Is it's like, okay, now I do have to be somewhat professional in this, and I have to grow and I have to develop. And now there are schedules, and look, one record isn't enough. Now you got to write another one. And I always found that a weird thing to go, we're going to, go in and write for a month, because to me, music is always either it flows or it doesn't. And sometimes going in to make it flow, hey, sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, which is why I find, remember Garth Samuelson's brother, Stu, said this to me years ago. We were talking about writing, and he mentioned to me, he goes, I think the trick is that you get the creative flow going. And then the trick is to just keep it going. Like, you don't let it stop. It's, you just always keep it going. And that I took notice of that, so.
Does that mean you write every day? Was that what he was saying, that you just?
Well, I think just continually, whether it's every day, whether it's, your band is in a sort of constant state of let's keep creating, that to keep the creation going is important. And I can speak from a guy who tours a lot. Touring can be stagnating to your creativity if you don't take moments to harness it. Like, I love, like, when I'm flying in an airplane, listening to something or reading a book, thoughts come to me and I break my phone out and I write lyrics and song ideas down, and or even a line, maybe a quote or something. I'll put it into my phone notepad. I'll be sitting in a hotel room or backstage, and I'll flip my phone around and I'll record some little riff or some little thing that I came up with, or even sing a vocal melody that I came up with. So I archive constantly. So, and it's part of that same thing, is to just keep the process going, keep the creative flow going. Years ago at soundcheck, Megadeth, we would always write, we'd go in and we'd soundcheck for like 30, 45 minutes or so. And Dave would start a riff, or, maybe we'd have something from backstage. We'd take it out onto the stage and, play it, especially during the Rest in Peace lineup. We did that a lot. So we'd always, and then we'd always have the front of house sound man record it. So we could always come home and we'd have cassettes to listen to, so we were always kind of ahead of the curve. So when we came off the road, it wasn't like we had nothing. There was always something to begin with, and I think that's what helped keep the prolific writing of that lineup in that period of the bands. It kept it collaborative, and it kept it fun, and there was always forward motion, so we could come right off of a big tour, and go right in the studio and start working on it. Stuff.
Do you think some of the things we've learned during the pandemic, right? Whether it's being collaborative, but whether it's using live streaming, do you think you guys will continue to do that once things go back to where they were earlier? Will this be like a second strategy almost?
I think it will be. I mean, again, how we're doing this, I think this is great. I mean, Zoom has been great for us to be able to, I mean, remember trying to do phone calls around the world. The calls dropped, the reception's terrible. Telephone technology is some of the worst. It's maybe cell phones are better with WhatsApp, and there's different apps we can engage in. But telephone technology, for as old as it is, it's the worst. Yet here we are sitting here talking on the internet. And it's pretty good. It's not bad, and it's nice to put a visual connection together. Absolutely. So I think there are a lot of things that it's crisis can present opportunity, and I think there is a lot of that. Look, it doesn't ever replace the real human interaction. There's just a different dynamic that happens in a three-dimensional in-person experience. But look, this helps. I think it will be part of, like you say, a strategy moving forward.
Because at the end of the day, it brings the musician and the fan closer together, right? So it should work. Like drive-in concerts, for example, right? I don't know. Have you been to any of the drive-in concerts?
I have not. I used to go to drive-ins as a kid growing up in Minnesota. And I've heard the country music people have been doing it, which makes sense because that's all show up in a pickup truck and tailgate and drink beer and watch a movie. I mean,
do you think it'll work conceptually? Because America has this culture of drive-in cinema, right? You've always had this culture.
I think so. And I mean, obviously, look, Metallica got ahead of it and they did it. So, I mean, they've always been a leader in everything, and certainly in metal genre. And of course, the size of their operation, they can compete with all the big boys, Garth Brooks and U2 and everybody on that level. And it always starts top down, usually, at least to get any real traction. And they've always swung the bat and spent the money and gone in and done it, and God bless them, because they've always kicked down the doors for all the rest of us to get through that. And I've seen Lamb of God is doing it. Corey Taylor just did one at the Forum in LA. So there's a lot of our friends are doing this. If Megadeth wasn't so deep into making a record right now, maybe we'd be doing them too. But it's this pandemic, quite honestly, has kind of carved a nice open channel for us to really just focus on making a record, which for us is right now is absolutely the most important thing for that organization. But with my own solo band, we're in a discussion with some people right now, because we're going to go do some shows here at the end of the month.
Nice. Okay.
October with Saliva down in Texas and Louisiana. Promoter said, "Hey, we're going to do these shows. They're big venues. We're going to limit the capacity. We'll social distance. We'll do that." Thom and I are now in a discussion with some other people about some live performance, which will mostly be streaming stuff. And we're just kind of seeing if we can put it together on short notice.
Nice.
Because there is an expense to the technology. There is, there is all of that. But so anyway, it's just cool that just a little band like Ellefson, because is
there a lot of red tape that you need to cut through to do these live shows, like with the health department and with the mayor of that town and all of that stuff?
There's all of that. Yeah. Because look, a state governor can shut anything down.
Yeah.
And, look, you can book flights and have the equipment driving to a city, and suddenly there's a flare up of cases, and the local ordinance can say, "Hey, we're shutting everything down." So there's a risk. And of course there's expenses to touring. There's expenses to traveling. And so, look, we're taking a chance, and of course we want to be safe. That's the other thing too, is, to even be out in front of people. So look, there is that. And I'm being aware of that as Thom is too. It's like, look, we don't want to be stupid. We're not being flippant and saying, "Oh, there's no pandemic," and we can, as a certain faction of people in our country tend to do. And we are not that faction. We are very much aware that, look, this is a real thing, and we don't want to be in harm's way. We don't want to put fans in harm's way. So I think if people are more responsible and we take precaution, we can make this happen, right? We can at least get back to doing some shows, right? Life has to move on. And look, I think obviously there's talk of a vaccine, whatever all that is. There's that. So look, it's there's all of it. I think it's all part of the conversation. It's not any one piece of it, and because the whole world has been affected by it, it's a global conversation that is something that, so I think is, again, I think the music community, the live entertainment performer society, we have all, look, it's in our heart and soul to be out performing and out doing this, and our fans want to see it and hear it and experience it again. So it's just a matter of coming up. Look, the human spirit will always preside over everything. That's why we've always overcome wars and disease and plagues and financial catastrophes. We somehow overcome it because the spirit, to just our human spirit, it will always, and the good Lord above, he presides over all of us, whatever our belief of that is, So.
And every pandemic obviously ends, right? This one's a bit of a nag, but it will hopefully end sooner than later. Dave, last question before I let you go. I read from, a little bit from your book about years ago, how disillusioned you were when Megadeth, when you guys broke up and all of that. And when I was researching the interview, I was just looking at the number of projects that you're involved in. There's just so many different creative avenues. How much of it stems from wanting to create an identity for yourself outside of Megadeth?
I think there's a bit of that for sure. Being in a band like Megadeth, it has a very singular focus. Every great organization needs a leader, and inside of that organization, Dave is the leader. And I've always known that. I've respected it, and I've always stood behind it. So I've never challenged it. I've always, I've always honored that. And I think we've gone through a number of different collaboration concepts. Probably euthanasia being the pinnacle, where we just sort of said, hey, come one, come all. We'll kind of, let's discuss up front who's going to get what. So this way we can just not make it about the money, and let's just bring our best to the table. I think a lot of fans would argue that some of those records of the 90s were, probably some of their favorites, as far as, and again, this is just the music. It was the culture. MTV was there. There was a lot going on at that time that made those records as popular as they were. Yet at the same time, different members that have come into the band have changed that dynamic. I think Kiko's brought an incredible collaboration with Dave. I see the two of them having a really good collaboration in a way that's effective, and I see them being a real guitar team and partnership. But with that said, everybody in a band has a role, and when I go into Megadeth, I sort of put that uniform on, wear that hat, and speak the sort of corporate lingo, if you will, because everyone has that, whether you work at UPS or Target or Starbucks or Megadeth, So I get into that role, and I have a role there, and I own that role. But when I'm outside of that dynamic, I think there is a bit of a reflection where I kind of go, all right, well, where I don't get to create some of the things I'd like that are part of me, Megadeth is not the vehicle for that. And Marty Friedman got to that point, and that's why he departed the group. He realized by 2000, I have aspirations to do other things. I can't do them within Megadeth, and rather than fight Megadeth, I'm just going to have to leave Megadeth. And that's very honorable for Marty, and he stayed very true to that thought life. And that's how you can respect somebody. You can still like them. We can be friends, even though we don't play in a band together anymore. And it was, Marty's a lovely guy, and he never did anything out of spite or malicious intent, but yeah, so there's that part of it. So for me, I write all the time, like I said, and there's always a lot of music coming in. Fans inside of Megadeth, I have people who want to hear music from me regardless of if it's in Megadeth or not, and I'm not delusional at all that fuck you guys, I'm going solo. I've never been that guy, because I see people do that, and I understand their frustration. Like, I just need to, it's like the Hulk, let me out of the skin. I have to get out and go. I get that. Believe me, I understand that. Like me and Frank Bello, for instance, I understand Frank has a role inside of Anthrax. And when he started writing these songs, I go, dude, me and him doing clinics together. And nice. Suddenly I got to know Frank as an artist, as a writer. Frank has this nice, happy face. I discovered with Altitudes and Attitude, there's a very deep and almost sorrowful back life, that he started to open up and share about when we were doing Altitudes and Attitude together. And he started talking about it through his songs, through his lyrics. And I said, you know what, as my friend, I'm going to support you in that. Let's do this. And that's wonderful. Got to write some of my stuff. He and I got to collaborate. And so I find in a lot of this stuff, I don't know, look, I read the Bible, right? Which is a Judeo-Christian story, but there's a narrative about the Apostle Paul going around Greece and everything, kind of spreading the gospel. And in a lot of ways, I kind of feel like sometimes that's my role, is like, okay, the Lord gave me a bass, go forth, young man, to rock the nations,
Yeah.
And sometimes I get to be the star of the show. Sometimes I'm just meant to be a member amongst members. There's always a different role in every one of these settings. And for whatever reason, the Creator has made me adaptable. That's, I guess, kind of a skill that he's given me, to be adaptable and to kind of be able to read the room and to know what my role is when I walk in the room and just kind of plug in, let's go and let's do this. And oftentimes and maybe just the nature of the bass guitar as an instrument and a bass guitarist as a person. I'm meant to be supportive to people and help and oftentimes with Dave, I'm there to help Dave be Megadeth. I'm there to help Dave get his thing out. I'm help Frank Bello do his thing. Me and Thom, have a really unique collaborative spirit together. So it's we're all really just here to serve. We're here to serve each other, and I think it's in the serving that we get served.
Fabulous, Dave. That's wonderful. I look forward to the album. Thank you for doing this. Thank you for taking the time.
Welcome. You're welcome.
I really look forward to listening to the album, and hopefully I see you in India someday.
Yes, hopefully sooner than later.
Or you can do a live stream for India.
Thank you.
So, yeah.
Maybe we can. There you go. That'll be one of them. Then we can pipeline it straight over to India for you.
Yeah, absolutely. You can do a live stream for an Indian audience, virtual live stream. Yeah.
I love it. Let's make it happen.
Wonderful, Dave.
Okay. All right. Nice to chat with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dave. See you. Bye.
See ya. Yeah. Bye-bye. Bye.
That's it for this week's episode of Tales from the Road. Tales from the Road is brought to you by the concert photographer and Moving Pictures Media. Don't forget to join us next week for another episode. If you like what you heard, subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, Spotify, or Google Play. Thank you for listening.